My mom left a voicemail, "You're out of the family business." No warning. What she didn't know. I owned 50% shares I bought. So I sold them to her worst enemy and watched everything fall apart without me. "You're out of the family business. Expect a call from our lawyer." That voicemail hit like a punch I didn't see coming. I was sitting in my truck, engine idling in the parking lot of our distribution warehouse, sipping coffee that had already gone cold. It was my mom's voice, flat and clipped like she was reading off a script she'd been practicing all morning. No explanation. No argument. No warning. Just exile. I listened to it 3 times, each time hoping I'd somehow misheard. I hadn't. Then I opened the group chat where my mom, dad, and brother usually spammed gifts and business updates and saw it was suddenly just me and my brother. No mom. No dad. Just me and Drew. I didn't respond with anger. I didn't ask questions. I just texted back. Understood. And that was it. The moment I stopped being the son who showed up first and locked up last. The moment I went from partner to problem. 50%. That's how much of the business I owned. Not inherited. Not gifted. Bought. With my own damn money. It started small, 5% after I left college, then slowly more as I reinvested every cent I made. I built our e-commerce channel from scratch. Rebranded our logo. Updated our systems. I modernized the family business. And apparently, I made myself a threat. Within hours of that voicemail, I was on the phone with an old friend from school who ran a regional distribution chain. Within 72 hours, the paperwork was done. My shares were transferred. The ink was barely dry when the first call came in. Then another. Then dozens more. By the second morning, my phone lit up with 54 missed calls. Most of them from Drew, the guy who'd always played nice until the money was on the table. When I finally answered, Drew's voice was frantic. "You sold? You sold your shares? To who? What did you do?" He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about what I took with me, my control, my vote, my systems knowledge, my client contacts. "You've got to undo this," he said, breathless. "We didn't mean to actually cut you out. It was just heated. You know how mom gets." I sat in silence for a beat. Then I said the only thing that made sense. "Why would she do this? Why now?" And the only answer I got back was a silence that said more than any excuse could have. "You'd think losing 50% of a company would cause a panic. You'd be right." After Drew's freak-out call, there was this eerie silence. No one from the family reached out for the next 12 hours. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not even a middleman or lawyer. Just radio silence, like they were regrouping, damage controlling. I sat in my apartment with the lights off, just watching the reflection of the city lights dance on the window. I kept replaying her voicemail in my head, trying to make sense of it. No explanation. No face-to-face conversation. Just banishment. And that was the part that burned. Because if this was just business, there would have been a meeting. A conversation. A warning. But this? This was personal. Someone wanted me gone and made sure it happened with 1 sentence and 0 context. So I kept circling back to the only thing that mattered. What did I miss? What don't I know? When Drew called again the next morning, his tone had changed. No more yelling. No more panic guilt. Just desperation thinly veiled with fake calm. "Look, I know things got weird. But if you could just talk to the buyer, maybe there's a way to reverse it. Or maybe we can buy back in. I'll even put up my own cash." I let him talk. I listened. And somewhere between the bargaining and the begging, he slipped. "She never thought you'd actually go through with it. I told her you might, but she didn't think you'd sell to him." That stopped me cold. Him. Not just someone. Not just a buyer. There was a name behind the panic. "Who do you think I sold to?" I asked slowly. But Drew just cursed under his breath and hung up. That night, I opened the fireproof safe I hadn't touched since last tax season. Inside, in a thin red folder, were printed copies of the operating agreements. I flipped through the documents, partly to remind myself of my rights, but mostly because I needed to confirm something I'd pushed out of my mind. Section 14.3. Any sale of partnership shares must be disclosed to all partners within 72 hours, with first right of refusal offered to all existing members before a third-party transaction. I had offered them the right, in writing, via certified mail, with a 2-week deadline, and they ignored it. So I sold. Clean. Legal. And they knew it. They knew the terms, saw the clock ticking, and still thought I'd blink first. But here's the real twist. They didn't just want me out. They thought they were pushing me out on their terms. What they didn't count on was me walking out on mine. I didn't tell Drew who I sold to because I knew he'd find out soon enough. But the moment I saw the buyer's name on the signed transfer agreement, even I had to sit back for a second. Jason Markham. Yeah, that Jason. The same guy my parents used to call an opportunistic little snake. The same guy they once accused of trying to poach our shipping clients when we were still building out the West region. The guy they refused to partner with out of principle. And I just handed him 50% of our family's company. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because he was the only one smart enough to know exactly what my stake was worth and dangerous enough to make it hurt. He'd been circling for years. I just finally gave him the opening. The funny thing is, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt numb. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about the moment I finally accepted the truth. My family didn't see me as a partner. Not really. I was a tool. Useful when things needed fixing, expendable when they didn't. And the second I stopped playing the agreeable golden son, the second I started challenging Drew on shady purchases and calling out Mom's consulting fees, they turned. I'd always thought love in our family was transactional. Now I knew it was conditional too. And that knowledge changes a person. It was around midnight when the final call came in. Dad. I almost didn't answer. But something in me needed to hear what he had to say. He didn't waste time. Alex, he said, his voice gruff, tired. What the hell were you thinking? I took a long breath. I was thinking I'd finally stop giving everything to people who treat me like I'm disposable. You could have tanked this company, he snapped. You gave the wolves a seat at the table. No, I said. You gave them the opening. I just walked through the door you shoved me out of. Silence. Then quieter. You know your mother didn't mean what she said. She said it. She meant it. And she sent it in a voicemail. Another silence, longer this time. Then Dad said something I didn't expect. I'll talk to her. Maybe we can work something out. And right there, I had a choice. Call Jason. Try to reverse the deal. Let them patch it up with hollow apologies and quietly bring me back in on their terms. Or leave it all in the past and let the consequences play out. I hung up without answering. Then I stared at my reflection in the dark window, my own voice whispering the only question that mattered now. Do I ever want to be part of this family again? 3 days after the sale, Jason walked into the company's main office like he'd been running it for years. No dramatic entrance, no speech. Just a nod to the receptionist and a polite, let them know I'm here for the partner meeting. I wasn't there, obviously. But I heard everything from an old friend in accounting who called me later that night just to say, dude, you broke the entire bloodline. Jason brought files. Reports. A performance audit. He handed them out like business cards and started circling numbers in red. You're bleeding money, he told them, because you stopped listening to the only person who knew how to grow this business in the last decade. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. Then he dropped the kicker, a clause from the new shareholder agreement that gave him authority to request an external audit and freeze executive compensation until discrepancies were resolved. Which meant my mom's consulting checks? Gone. Drew's business trips? Flagged. My dad's silent partner bonus? Suspended. Cue the explosion. Drew was the first to call again. His voice wasn't frantic this time. It was angry, the kind of controlled anger that only comes from someone realizing they're not the smartest person in the room anymore. You're gonna let him tear this apart, he said. You know he's not interested in fixing anything, he just wants to gut us and resell. I didn't answer that. He went on. He froze the expense accounts, man. Do you have any idea what that does to our suppliers? Our cash flow? Half our vendors are threatening to pull out. I stayed quiet. Drew finally said it. The thing I'd been waiting for. This didn't have to happen. We could have figured this out. You didn't even try. That one stung. I tried, I said. For a decade. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said something that knocked the wind out of me. Mom's talking about retiring. Selling off her shares. I blinked. To who? There was a pause. Jason made an offer. Later that night, I got a text from my mother. Just one line. This is bigger than any of us. Please talk to me before you let it go further. There was no apology. No acknowledgement of the voicemail. No, I'm sorry I treated you like trash. Just a tone that felt more like a warning than a request. But it was the first direct message from her since she cut me out. I stared at it for a long time. Thought about how I used to drop everything just to fix her tech issues or sit through her marathon lectures about brand loyalty and legacy. I thought about the cold silence in my apartment that night, when all I got was, expect a call from our lawyer. And then I powered off my phone. Because now I was the one not picking up. It was an accident, I think. One of the junior partners, someone I mentored years ago. accidentally CC'd me on an internal email thread. I hadn't been removed from all the distribution lists yet, and this one came through like a ghost from the other side. The subject line was boring enough. Upcoming restructure notes from finance. But one of the attachments, a scanned handwritten note, my mother's handwriting. For lines, scribbled in blue ink, push Alex out quietly. Drew to absorb logistics. Notify lawyer forced buyout. No contact until transfer is finalized. Date stamped 2 weeks before I got the voicemail. I stared at it for a long time, that sinking feeling finally settling into full-on betrayal. They'd been planning this. Not because of anything I did. Not because of a sudden emergency or disagreement. Just strategy. Quiet removal. Sweep me out like old furniture. The same people who raised me, who hugged me in family photos, who told me I was the future of this company. And it made me ask the one question I hadn't dared until now. Did they ever actually see me as family? Or just leverage? 3 days later, Drew showed up at my door. No text, no call, just a knock, and then his voice through the wood. Alex, I'm not here to fight. Just let me talk. I opened the door. He looked like hell. Tie loose, shirt wrinkled, eyes sunken. He stepped inside like he'd been here 1,000 times, then stood awkwardly in the middle of my living room like he had no idea what to do with his hands. They're falling apart, he said finally. I didn't answer. He kept going. Dad's talking about retiring too. Jason's pushing for a controlling vote. If Mom sells, that's 60% in his hands. You understand what that means? I do, I said. That's why I sold it to him. That shut him up. Then softer. Why didn't you come to me? Before you did it. I laughed dry and sharp. I did. Remember 6 months ago when I raised questions about the expense reports? You told me I was being paranoid. Then you and Mom stopped including me in partner meetings. He had the decency to look ashamed. Okay, he said. Maybe we screwed up. But you really want to see it all go down like this? I didn't start this, I said. But I'm not going to save them from it either. That night, another message from Jason. A simple email with a short attachment. Partnership restructure proposal. At the bottom, offer. Alex may retain advisory role with profit share if he formally distances from family decisions. Optional. No pressure. Signed, Jason Markham. And there it was, my seat at a different table. Not as the good son. Not as the peacekeeper. As a man who finally drew a line. But the part that twisted my gut wasn't the offer. It was the realization that someone I barely trusted had offered me more respect, clarity, and honesty than my own family ever did. I was digging through a storage box that night, trying to find a thumb drive I'd stashed years ago, when I found it. An old cassette labeled, March 2005, Shop Talk. I almost tossed it aside. But the handwriting stopped me. Dad's. Back when we used to record brainstorming sessions. Before Zoom, before formal minutes. Just us around a table with cheap mics and big dreams. I found an old player, popped it in, and let it run while I made coffee. It started off innocent. Dad's voice younger, joking about inventory. My uncle chiming in with ideas about expansion. Then my mom's voice, calm and deliberate. Eventually, Drew's going to take over the operations. He's got the temperament. Alex will probably grow out of the honeymoon phase. He's a good worker, but he's too idealistic for long-term leadership. Dad laughed. He's sharp, though. You sure he won't feel sidelined? Mom didn't miss a beat. We'll keep him close. Give him titles. Just not too much actual power. He's better as the front-facing guy anyway. Clients like him. I froze. That wasn't a strategy meeting. That was a blueprint for managing me like a PR asset. I stopped the tape. Sat there in silence, listening to the faint whir of the machine rewind like a heartbeat trying to take it all back. A week passed. Then I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A real letter, hand-addressed. No return name. The handwriting was careful, almost familiar. Inside was a short note. I didn't know. Not all of it. I believed what they told me, That you were planning to take over and squeeze us out. That's how they spun it. I'm sorry for believing it so easily. Dad. Folded inside the note was a copy of a will. Not his, my grandfather's. And on the last page, a handwritten codicil. Dated 2007. In the event of my passing, I want Alex to be given full rights to the business branding, naming, and associated licensing. He's the only one who understands what this name could mean to people outside our front door. No one ever told me. They buried it. Because even then, my grandfather saw something they didn't. That night, I sat in front of the open window, city lights flickering below, wind cool against my face. I thought about everything, the voicemail, the erased meetings, the tape, the will, the hollow apologies. And then I made the call. Jason picked up immediately. I've reviewed the offer, I said. And I'm ready to talk next steps. He paused. So you're in. I'm not stepping back, I said. I'm stepping forward. Just not with them. He didn't gloat. Didn't celebrate. He just said, all right, let's build something better. And I realized then not every betrayal ends with revenge. Some end with clarity. The voicemail was from Jenna in HR. Her voice was tight, trying too hard to sound neutral. Hi Alex, just a heads up, your dad came in today. He's removing himself from all active roles. Said it was best for the business. He left a box on your old desk. A box. That word landed weird in my chest. It was like the whole thing was being wrapped up with a bow. Like someone decided my relationship with my family could be packed up and left behind like old files and stale coffee mugs. Still, I walked back into that building like a ghost visiting its own funeral. The receptionist looked up surprised, maybe a little guilty. Jenna handed me the box and didn't make eye contact. Inside? My nameplate. A worn photo of me and Drew at the company launch. A notebook with my ideas, dog-eared, pages warped from coffee stains and late nights. And a letter. Not sealed. Just folded. For what it's worth, I was proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it. Dad. No signature. No apology. No real weight behind it. Just a sentence trying to rewrite 28 years of silence. That same night, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from my mother. Dinner Sunday. Just family. Hope you'll come. I stared at the screen for a while. There was no mention of the business. No reference to the fallout. Just a carefully worded olive branch. But I knew what it was. A test. They wanted to see if I'd fold. Come back to the table. Let it all slide under the rug like every other time. For a moment, I almost said yes. Part of me still wanted to believe in some Hallmark ending where everyone says sorry and means it. But then I remembered that note from years ago, keep him close, just not too much power, and the warmth drained out of the idea completely. 2 days later, I met with Jason for coffee. No suits. No contracts. Just two people who'd spent years circling each other with suspicion. I thought you hated my family, I said. Jason smiled. I did. Then I realized your family was never the problem. Just the structure. The silence. The way they clung to power like it was inheritance, not responsibility. I sipped my drink. So what now? He leaned forward. We're going to rebuild. You and me. Clean. Efficient. Transparent. And if you're willing, we use your name. Not theirs. That one hit hard. You want my name on it? Jason nodded. You're the one people trust. You're the one who showed them how it could be done differently. I sat there stunned. Not because I didn't believe I could do it, but because for the first time in my life, someone was offering me a legacy without strings attached. I showed up, not because I was ready to forgive, but because I needed them to look me in the eye when I didn't. The house looked the same as it always had, trimmed lawn, porch light flickering like a nervous tick. Inside, the table was set for 6, even though only 4 of us sat down. No one mentioned the missing seats. Drew smiled too much. My mother kept adjusting the salt shaker like it was a centerpiece. My father barely looked at me. It felt like a staged apology wrapped in polite silence. They served roast chicken. My favorite. We ate like strangers. Until my mom finally put down her fork and said, "We've all made mistakes." That was her version of accountability, vague, shared, shapeless. I let the silence stretch long enough to make her squirm. Then I said, "What part do you think I played in being lied to?" She blinked. "We didn't lie. You strategized me out of a business I helped build. You weaponized silence. And when I walked away, you acted shocked like I wasn't supposed to have the spine for it." Drew tried to jump in, but I held up a hand. "I'm not here for forgiveness," I said. "I'm here to say something out loud so there's no confusion." I stood up. I'm done being the son who gives more than he gets. I'm not bitter. I'm just done. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. No one followed me. There was no shouting, no tears. Just the sound of my own steps on the driveway gravel. When I got in my car, I sat for a moment and stared at that porch light, still flickering. How many nights had I waited under that same light, hoping someone would come to the door and say they were proud of me? And now I was leaving it behind, not because they changed, but because I finally did. 1 week later, the paperwork was filed. New brand. New structure. My name on the door. My rules on the wall. Jason stepped back and gave me room to lead. We brought in young talent. Ethical partners. Clear books. No backroom deals. Within 2 months, we'd reclaimed half the clients who left after my family's implosion. By month 3, 2 vendors from the old company reached out and said the quiet part out loud. We trust you now that it's yours. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It was late past midnight when I heard the knock. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then it came again, steady, deliberate. I opened the door to find my dad standing there. Not dressed up. No suit. No tie. Just a windbreaker and that look he used to wear when we used to change truck tires together at the warehouse. He didn't say anything at first. Just held something out. A photo. Old. Creased at the edges. The two of us, back when I was barely 15, standing in front of the warehouse, grinning like idiots next to a busted forklift we'd managed to fix with duct tape and caffeine. I found it in the garage, he said. Thought maybe you'd want it. I took it, but I didn't invite him in. He looked around as if expecting some part of the house to make this less awkward. Then he said, your mother's selling her shares next week. Drew's thinking about leaving too. I nodded. He asked if I'd reach out. Try to mend things. I raised an eyebrow. And you? I didn't come for Drew. There was a long silence. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, I thought I was protecting you. All those years. But maybe I was just protecting the version of you I needed to stay the same. I didn't respond. He didn't wait for one. He just nodded, turned, and left. A week later, Jason forwarded me a transfer document. My mom had sold her shares. Not to him. To a silent holding company. I dug deeper. Turns out it wasn't that silent. It was backed by a non-profit we'd once supported together, a women's shelter we used to donate to annually before Mom cut it from the budget. One I'd personally volunteered with during my early years. Her signature was on the form. No note. No explanation. Just a single checkbox marked. Charitable redirection. Maybe guilt. Maybe grace. I didn't know. But for the first time I felt something strange in the aftermath of betrayal. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Just closure. Last week, I hung that old photo from the forklift day in my office. Not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I was always meant to build for myself. No family crest. No old names. Just mine. And when a new junior hire asked me what that photo meant, I said, it's the last time I fixed something that didn't deserve saving. Then I smiled, got up, and went back to work.